Welcome to Board Game Binge, the place where we bring you bite-sized, bingeable board game content from across the industry. I'm your host, James Staley, and in this episode, we're chatting with Joe Wiggins, developer of the Wanderer's Guide, a fantasy atlas for your RPG campaign game. It's beautifully illustrated by the very talented Andrew Bosley. The Wanderer's Guide launched on Kickstarter on November 10th and has already crushed its goal. Joe, welcome to the binge. How you doing?
I'm doing good, James. I like that alliteration you had there at the beginning. Bite. How did that go? Bite. You have to have it memorized.
Bite-sized, bingeable board game content. Yes, of course. You expect nothing but alliteration when you have a podcast called Board Game Binge, right?
So I was waiting for it to like keep going, because then you were saying from across the industry. And I was like, from the breadth of the business of board games or something like that. That would have been. I was like, man, I wonder how many B's we're gonna get here in a row. But that was great. That was really.
It's like this Wanderer's Guide of introductions, isn't it?
Yes.
So Joe, I just checked out the campaign numbers. I like to do this right before we go live, so I can get the most up-to-date information.
Mm-hmm.
You have hit. Now I'm going to put it in US dollars. Usually I do Canadian because it's bigger, but this one,
Okay.
the numbers are a nicer factor. So 30,000 you've reached so far on a $10,000 goal. That's US dollars, and Canadian dollars, that's about $40,000 you've hit. And you've got still 22 days to go. 468 backers already. You got to be pumped.
Yeah, we're pretty happy about it. We are just elapsed the 48-hour mark. By about the 78-hour mark or 72-hour mark, people say is kind of when that initial really big flood comes in. But we have a lot more stuff that we have planned for the rest of the campaign, as far as like different marketing things that we're going to try. So yeah, we think that this is just kind of the tip of the iceberg. And, you know, this is also our first time going out it. Based on where things are trending, we're really excited. We already have like 2,000 people that haven't backed, but have clicked like, hey, remind me before this campaign is over. Nice. So we're also really encouraged by that. It seems like a lot of people, you know, are kind of waiting for payday or something. So they're just kind of checking back in with us by the time the campaign ends. So we're really encouraged by everything that we're seeing. And this is kind of our first time running a campaign of our own. So we're just really pumped about what, you know, we're seeing here. So yeah, it's been really cool, and people are really gravitating towards it. And the comments have been, you know, people really like the product and seem to be really excited about it.
Oh yeah, it is doing very, very well, as you know. You have like a reverse bell curve, right? So you'll always see kind of your flood at the beginning. So if you can get a flood like you've had so far, that is amazing. That gives you an indication of kind of how the back half is going to look. And then again, if you can sprinkle in some goodies along the way, you've got the opportunity to pull in even more people. So for our listeners and people watching, can you take us through the Wanderer's Guide? What is it? Explain what the Wanderer's Guide is.
So I guess I'll talk a little bit about the conception of it. Or I guess I'll talk about the product more, and we can talk about the conception later.
Sure.
But what it is it is a collection of beautifully illustrated fantasy maps that all fit together in this one world. And so where you might see this beautifully illustrated overview world with oceans and mountains and forests, you can actually turn the page and find maps that are zoomed in even further to see different port cities and capital cities and farming villages and other types of maps that kind of get you even more zoomed in. And if you zoom in even further into those maps, you can turn the page and find even closer zoomed in levels to the map, which would be like your castles. And we did this really cool thing with the building maps where they actually have this like 3-dimensional isometric cutaways.
Yeah.
So I remember when I was a kid, I used to love getting from the library those books where it was like, here's a space shuttle and it's cut in half, and you could like see all of the stuff inside of the space shuttle. And I would just like stare at those books for hours. And this is the same thing, but like for like fantasy buildings and dungeons and like wizards towers and stuff like that. So it has this really cool, just like Easter Easter egg type feel where you just see all of these cool hidden elements as you look at the artwork. But basically, it is a complete fantasy atlas, as we call it, because it has basically all of the locations all within this one world. But we haven't actually written the story for you. We haven't told you what this city's called and who the king is and,
Hmm.
you know, what the bad guy is and where the dragons live. Like, we haven't done that for you because the goal for the Wanderer's Guide is for you to take this beautiful, immersive artwork and for you to put your own game into it. So we're providing the setting and you're going to bring your own story, which is what I feel is something that is missing from the RPG world. Right now, there's kind of two elements. It's here is a book that tells you exactly what to do and where to go and who to talk to. And in this dungeon, there will be this room with these monsters and you'll find this item. And so there's these very specific pre-made adventures that you can run for role-playing games. And on the other side is make it all up yourself. Like you just have to just completely make up everything from scratch. And this is kind of filling that gap where it's like, I want to tell my story, but I don't want to go through this entire doldrum of having to build, you know, this world from scratch. So we're giving you the most beautiful world we can possibly give you with as many locations as we can. And we're unlocking more with more and more stretch goals. And you're basically going to take this and put your own amazing story into it for your RPG campaign so that the world actually feels alive.
Yeah, I was listening to one reviewer. A couple of the reviewers are actually saying one was described it almost like a sandbox, right?
Yeah,
Here's your
it's
sandbox, now go
basically
play.
yeah, exactly. It's a big sandbox adventure for you to have your own RPG campaign in. So, you know, you get to decide the story. It's not written for you. It's up to you, but it's set in probably one of the most beautiful settings I've seen in any, you know, D&D product for sure, because of course the artwork is by the incredibly talented Andrew Bosley. So you probably know him from Everdell, Tapestry, Merchants of the Dark Road, many other games. But I think that he had a very specific vision for this product, and he has
Sure.
really executed it to a very high level.
Well, I think our listeners know him from two other areas. One is he was a guest on the show, so I would
Mm-hmm.
encourage any listeners to go back, go on boardgamebinge.com, go through our back catalog, find the Andrew Bosley interview. It was fantastic, and he also sponsored an autographed copy of Everdell for us to do a sweepstakes
Oh.
giveaway. We just closed that a couple weeks ago. It was the largest giveaway I think I've participated in. There was a huge pouring of people coming into the binge just as a result of wanting to get their hands on that game. So, especially having him sign it was a special moment. He is very talented. Anybody that
Mm-hmm.
knows who he is will attest to that. Certainly, I think what I thought was amazing here is just the detail in this artwork, right? So,
Mm-hmm.
as you said, you've got the kind of the map pulled back. You zoom into like a city, you kind of see the detail of the city. You can even see in the distance, you can see the characters, people walking in the streets. And then when you see some of
Yep.
these cutaways, you can kind of look down in the corner and you'll see something happening down the corner. And it's just crazy the amount of detail that he put into these images.
I was talking to Rado from Runs Through
Yeah.
yesterday, and we were just talking about the product, and one of the things he said is, I don't even play RPGs, but who wouldn't want 50 pages of Andrew Bosley artwork to just put in your house somewhere so you can just open it up and just look at it and put yourself into a good mood. And he's like, and the fact that it's all this like beautiful fantasy world, he's like, I mean, whether you play RPGs or not, I think this is a product that most people would want, irregardless. So that was definitely very encouraging to hear that kind of feedback. And I agree with him. If Andrew Bosley if this didn't even have any functionality besides, hey, this is just some pretty pictures from Andrew Bosley, I still think it would be well worth checking out on Kickstarter.
Oh, absolutely. Now, I just want to actually comment really quickly on the video that you had done on the kind of the top of your Kickstarter campaign. I'm just going to fix my mic here. I think I'm cutting out. Here we are. The two things. One was that you were able to communicate in 50 seconds exactly what this is. So bravo on that, because the number of campaigns I've seen where there's a video and it goes on for 2 minutes and you're like, what is this about? Like, what are they trying to, get me to pledge? And like, and I clocked it like within 50 seconds, it was crystal clear what this was that you were promoting. So bravo on that. Two, the animation on that video was impressive. Who did you have do who did the video for you? Was that a third party you used? Did you do it yourself, or how'd this come together?
Yeah, I'll give a shout out to John Meatling, who I believe is not a computer, and he does a lot of video work. He also runs, he has his own board game publishing company called Portal Dragon.
Okay.
That's done a couple of games, but John Meatling did the campaign for Hall of the Mountain King by Burnt Island Games, and
Okay.
that's kind of where I knew his credentials from. And I reached out to him and I was like, this is what I want. And this is kind of what my idea was. And he was like, oh, perfect, no problem. And he hired all the voice actors to do all of the different parts of the video. He did all of the animations and rendering himself. He even basically gave me the video as, here is the story driven video, here is the informational driven video, here is basically a bunch of different GIFs that basically distill both portions of that video down to just a GIF. And
Yeah.
so he was really great working with him, and he was, very timely and wonderful to work with. So I highly recommend it. If you're looking for a really great Kickstarter video, I could not recommend him high enough. Was fantastic.
Yeah, it was even I got Mike Bruner there in the lobby listening, and he said, yeah, that video was awesome. He likes the two parts too, how you do kind
Mhm.
of concise up quick up front, get that concise story out, so people that are the quick clickers that are just going to jump off it after coming in for a few seconds, but then you then have the extended story kind of on the back half of the video, which I think is great. I've seen other people make the mistake of doing the reverse of that, doing the long-winded story and then getting to kind of the quick, this is what the game is about, and guess what, you've lost most of the people before they even got there. So
It took
yeah.
10 people telling me to switch it, because originally it was the other way, and like 10 people were like, flip the video, and I was so attached to that story, and I was like, oh, but it's so good. I think and then like eventually, you're right, like we switched it and we're like, yeah, this is better. And yeah,
Yeah.
you're right, like just being able to like in like 50 seconds be like, boom, done. You don't have to watch any further.
Yeah.
You have all the information you possibly need about this product in under a minute. And I think that that's something that most videos, most Kickstarter videos need to get better at, is being able to like tell me everything I need to know and tell it to me in less than a minute.
Oh yeah, it's the elevator pitch, right? You got to
Yeah.
get that elevator pitch out there. So what's the background? Like, have you been doing D&D for decades, or what got you into this whole thing to begin with?
So I have always had a very strange love affair with role-playing games and D&D. I played a little bit in junior high, and I had one friend that played D&D and another friend that played D&D, and they both played it just me and them. Like, it was just me and this person and me and this person, and we could never actually get all three of us to play D&D as a group. And we only ever played like 3 or 4 times, and eventually I moved, and I just kind of lost that connection to D&D from very, very early in my life. And I never really went back to it, but I always just held that, proud geeky fascination with like the, wanting to like grab the source books when you're in the library and just like flip through the monster manuals and be like, oh man, look at all of this cool stuff. And it's always been something that I've really wanted to do, because I'm a board gamer through and through. I
Sure.
love playing board games.
You have a
And
couple
like
behind you, by
I
the way.
Yes, I do. Quite a few. And if I turned you, like, this whole room is just completely
Oh
covered in
wow.
board games.
Yeah. So for anybody
Um,
listening, just to kind of visually illustrate, the whole back wall of Joe's office there is just floor to ceiling games. So he plays a
uh,
couple.
yeah, and actually, this one is specifically, these are like games that I've worked on in my day job. So
Okay.
like these are ones that I'm like showing off, because I'm like, oh, I worked on this one and I got to help
Sure.
make this one. Which we'll talk about in a little bit. But I've always, so like, I'm a crunchy Euro gamer. So when it comes to like mechanics and stuff like that, I get what I need from playing 18xx games and really heavy crunchy Euros like Brass and stuff like that. But what attracts me to Dungeons and Dragons and RPGs in general is like, I've always wanted to get a group of friends together to play like a long forum storytelling, big type of like, thing with like deep character driven things and play a
Sure.
campaign that lasts years and have a world that evolves and grows and everything like that. And I've just never been able to pull a group together that has those same wants and desires. And so, it's 2020 right now. So if you're listening to this, I don't know, 20 years in the future, you can look back in the history books and know that, we were about 3 months into quarantine when I was realizing that I really want to do this RPG thing. Like I really want to. And I was looking through, I had a couple of RPG books, some D&D 5th edition books, and I was looking through them and I was like, all these books that are just pre-written adventures. They're go meet this person who wants you to find this magical artifact and it's in this dungeon and it's guarded by this monster and you got to meet this person to learn the code and I'm just like, I don't want to like make my people like go through this like pre-written story. I was like, I want to tell a fun, exciting story myself. I was like, I can make up a cool story, but what was daunting is, where do I set that story? Do I have to like
Yeah.
draw my own continent and like do all of this other stuff? And I was like, I bet there's something out there. And this is literally what I thought. I said, I bet there's something out there where it's here's an entire world and here's all the places in this world and it's like all beautifully captured, but you can put your own story into it. And so I went online looking for that thing and
Yeah.
it didn't exist. And it took me about a week to be like, I think there's an idea there. I think there's an idea there. And so I got on the phone with a couple of people that I know are really involved and plugged into the RPG world.
Sure.
And they were like, that's actually a good idea. They're like, nothing like that exists. And so I talked to a couple of people, talked to Andrew Bosley, and that was back in June. And here we are in November, and it's on Kickstarter right now, The Wanderer's Guide. It is like you said, it's a sandbox fantasy atlas for you to play your D&D campaigns in.
So the decision to go to Andrew, was that based on his work, his fantasy work, and some of these other games like Everdell, or did you have a relationship? Because I mean, your day job, you work with Panda Games, right? So was it a connection through the game angle, or was it more just he admired his work he saw on some other games?
Yeah, I mean, when you're in the industry, you get to just know a lot of people. And
Sure.
though I had not worked directly with Andrew, we had been on an email because I was actually working on the production of Merchants of the Dark Road
Okay.
around the time that he was kind of doing the artwork for it, and it was on Kickstarter. And one of the things on Merchants of the Dark Road is there was a board, the game board, and it has all of these little buildings, like this little city that you're kind of traveling your merchant caravan through.
Yeah.
And when I saw him draw, when I saw the artwork for that board, I was like, that fits really well with kind of the idea that I have in my head. And so I just reached out to him, and it helps when it's like you reach out and he looks at you on Facebook and it's like you have 385 friends in common, right? And he's like, oh, I know this Joe guy. He's the guy that is working with Elf Creek on whatever
Yeah.
with Panda Games. And so I was able to just hop on a call with him, and I kind of pitched him the idea. And by the end of that call, he was like, I want to do this. He's like, I want to do this. He's like, I have a very specific vision. And honestly, in my mind, it was going to be very top down
Yep.
kind of based. And he had this idea to make it look more like a Google Earth kind of like very
Yeah.
photorealistic way. And I think that was the right move. It was very, very cool to see his vision kind of meld with what the idea that I had was. And it kind of, just came together in a beautiful way.
How long did it take him to illustrate this? Like 50 pages. Like that's a lot of illustrating, right?
Well, it's not all illustrated yet. We have about 10 pieces of art. The world map is what we would consider in final form. The rest
Okay.
of the artwork that's on the Kickstarter page, Andrew considers to be like 60% done, and even then, it's complete. It's mind-blowingly good. Like it's really, really beautiful.
Yeah.
But we put this together just so people could get an idea of what's going to be offered. But
Okay.
that's because we want our Kickstarter community to help us decide, when we unlock this forest city for the elven city and the elven castle, we want them to like help us decide what kind of things do you want to see in an elven city, you know?
Yeah. Did has he put any Easter eggs in the Wonders Guide? Like, are people going to find like Everdell characters, perhaps, or some maybe some tapestry characters? Is there going to be any kind of little jewels there? Or
No, actually, there's a couple of very cool Easter eggs that are in there. So as you know, Andrew has worked with Jamie Stegmaier
Yeah.
quite a bit, and there are some you wouldn't know them by you'd have to look hard, but there are a lot of very specific Stonemaier references in the artwork in different places, and so we've had a lot of fun figuring out where we're going to put those in and how we're going to hide them. There's a couple of places where we have merchant caravans and of course merchants of the Dark Road,
Yeah.
but very specifically, I think that there are some very specific and we're going to reveal those actually pretty soon, but there's some very specific Everdell treats and hidden pieces that are going to be in the Wanderer's Guide. And so Andrew has kind of a very specific vision for, using a lot of the artwork and worlds that he's already created to kind of help fill out some of the more fun details in the Wanderer's Guide for sure.
It'd be kind of cool once it's finally out for you to say, like, look, there's 50 Easter eggs, and give people like a month to try to find them all before you kind of release what's in there. That might be kind of neat too, right? To let them almost go and try to find them.
I'll tell you the hardest thing with the Wanderer's Guide right now for us is not making it like writing that line between like being, generic enough for like people to use in any type of fantasy campaign and just going, where's Waldo with it, with just how much stuff we're trying to cram into these images. And honestly, that's one of the things that is the most fun is when you look at a lot of these art pieces, they tell a story, but that story is up for you to determine and up for you to decide what's going on. Very specifically, I'll hit on this one really quickly. But in the port city, which is my favorite map, there's a river that kind of goes from the ocean and cuts the town in two. And there's this big kind of like stark angled dark tower on one side, and then a bright golden gleaming tower on the other side. And so the story that we had built around this one particular map is that there are these two different guilds that control different sides of the city, and there's like this common marketplace in the middle on an island in the river where it's kind of like neutral territory and neutral ground. And so we kind of built that story in there. And again, we're not telling you that's what's in this picture, but you can use those types of elements in the artwork to jump off and to make your own type of story that kind of fits in there. But that's what we're trying to do with this artwork, is just really make it as fun and as interesting as we possibly can.
So talk to me about some of the back end of the Kickstarter. So are you using a fulfillment company or companies when this is, I think, August 2021, I guess is when this comes out, right?
Yeah. So we should be delivering around August. I haven't 100% made up my mind. I mean, I know everybody in the fulfillment game because I work in the manufacturing game.
Sure.
So we have to hand stuff off to them on a daily basis. So we've gotten quotes from all of the big names when it comes to fulfillment. And so once it kind of gets done, we'll touch base with those guys probably in April or March, just to kind of solidify some things and then make a decision on whether we're using Quartermaster or D6 or, Fun Again. All of them do great work and excellent work.
Sure.
It just kind of depends on timelines and capacity and, what the prices come out to when they're ready. But we will be using a reputable fulfillment company. But, I just recommend everyone do their due diligence and find out who's going to be the best for what your campaign is trying to do, because everybody executes things in a little bit of a different way and has a different specialty. So,
and then the manufacturing, is it being done by Panda or someone else, or?
Yeah, we're definitely hoping to hit a higher threshold with the Kickstarter than where it's currently at. So definitely, if we're high enough, we will be using Panda to manufacture the game. Right now, we're hovering right around 500 backers, but it's, again, only 2 days to the campaign. So we really expect that number to be much higher than that by the end, which would mean that we would be going with Panda. But if it does end up being a lower number, we might choose an option that has like lower, minimum order quantities and stuff like that. Panda is a very large mass production facility. So, sometimes it doesn't make, sense to try to do a project where you're only making, a couple hundred versus, several thousand. So
are you going to make enough to go to retail with it? Like, will this be available after Kickstarter, or is this like exclusively Kickstarter and then it's done?
This will be direct sales only, and
Okay,
after, it's on, we're offering a very kind of sweetheart deal on Kickstarter. Maybe it's not good business sense, but after the Kickstarter, the book is going to cost $40, and the token pack is going to cost $5,
okay,
and we're selling that for $35 on the Kickstarter right now, for both of those things. So it's kind of $10 cheaper right now on the Kickstarter, but there's no plans for this to be in retail distribution. This is going to be, if you want to buy this after the Kickstarter, it's going to be bought directly from us for a higher price. So
got it. And then the social media. One thing I noticed is that on Facebook, your page has reached, I think, is 1.6 thousand fans.
mhm.
You just launched it in July of this year. That's a huge number in such a short time. How did you do that? Was it leveraged with Panda, or was there other things you
it,
did like ads, or how did you get there?
So Andrew Bosley is definitely, has his own following for sure.
Yeah.
But even beyond that, it took a lot of hard work. Every time Andrew would do a line drawing or do a color rough or do a final draft of any of the art, I was joining, every D&D RPG group I could, and not spamming my Kickstarter, but just saying, hey, check out this cool art, and putting, at the Wanderer's Guide, when I shared it, for our upcoming project. And I was very diligent every time I got a piece of art, and going into those groups and sharing them and commenting them, interacting with all of them. And a lot of Andrew's maps, the world map in particular, I think when we shared the final version of the world map, all together, it got like 2,000 impressions, like people liking it, commenting on
Wow.
it, sharing it, and stuff like that. So we were very pleased with just the reception of the community and to the maps that we're seeing. So we were really, really happy with just how the community in the RPG space responded to it.
So any ads, or was it all organic?
I think we ran like $200 worth of ads
Wow.
total. And that was really just a couple weeks, about a month before the Kickstarter, just to see, how things performed. So all of that was done, through mostly organic means.
And now that the campaign has started, is there any kind of social media amplification you guys are doing, or what kind of social media outreach are you doing now?
Right now we're running some ads with Backer Kit. I've
Okay.
also, one thing that I did is I started reaching out as early as I could to everybody who, works in this space. I started reaching out to a wonderful guy who's become a good friend of mine, but Ricardo, who runs a company called Hit Point Press,
Yeah.
who's done campaigns like Humblewood and Deck of Benny. And, he's been promoting our campaign on his own, social media platforms and stuff. I've been working with Lance Meister, who's been helping me with a lot of the just RPG elements for the Wanderer's Guide to make sure it's exactly what RPG people want. And he's had a lot of connections into that industry as well. And honestly, I think the industry really wants to support each other and wants to like help new products grow and
Yeah.
find audiences and stuff like that. So I've really just been really trying to build those audiences and build those relationships with people from the first time I had this idea. I've been reaching out to people and trying to talk to them about the product.
Now, where do you go from here? Is there going to be like a 2.0 version of Wanderer's Guide, or are you doing another map, or like what's next after this is kind of done?
Yeah, if this first one is does well, and it looks like it's definitely headed in a very, very good direction. We've specifically built into this first world map. If you look on the Kickstarter page, there's these frozen mountains with a path that kind of leads up to the north,
Mm,
that we're interested in exploring, and really just kind of taking the camera angle and just putting it on those mountains and looking out amongst that like frozen northern part of the world. There's also a tiny peak of a desert continent that comes out from the bottom right hand corner.
yep.
That's another place where we would just take the camera and flip it 360 degrees and say, oh, there's this huge desert world that we want to explore. And we have about 5 different ideas, and we would love to like make 5 different books and kind of consolidate everything at the end with just a gigantic world map of all of the places that we've explored through the Wanderer's Guide. And I mean, I don't know. After that, maybe we go to space. But yeah, we have a lot of really fun ideas for where the Wanderer's Guide and the different products that we're going to offer in the Wanderer's Guide are going to be.
Oh, that's fantastic. Well, Joe, I just want to say that this is again what a cool campaign. certainly the illustrations are breathtaking and incredibly detailed. You guys must be so proud of this, where you've landed so far in just a couple days. And I can't wait to see how this ends. I just want to wish you all the best on this campaign. And anybody out there that loves the artwork of Andrew Bosley or is into role playing, this is certainly something that could be a good part of your collection. So check out the Kickstarter page, The Wanderer's Guide. Joe, all the best, eh?
Thank you so much, James.
Take care. Cheers. This has been an episode of the Board Game Binge podcast, hosted by James Staley, produced by James Staley and Mike Bruner, with original music by Nick Smith. If you would like to watch these interviews live, simply join the Facebook group Board Game Binge, and you'll get access to live interviews, giveaways, and interesting board game content from across the industry. I can't wait for you to join us. See you next time.